All right. Haven't done a personal journal or anything in a while, but I had a lot of thoughts going this morning and wanted to document kind of what's on my mind. I'm a little shaky because sometimes I just kind of have these thoughts and I don't know if they're like, ooh, revolutionary, or just like, yeah, everyone knows that. So the thought I had this morning was about the basics of humanity and how every human has a brain. Insert your snide comment now. Um, in that brain, there's the conscious part, the part that executes and does things, the physical aspects, the speech, the saying words, how you say things, your tone of voice, all that stuff. Then there's a subconscious that everyone's pretty familiar with by now, which is the part that you kind of talk to yourself, or it narrates what's going on, or it's like a secondary voice basically that lives free in your head. And then what I was thinking on is neurodivergency, autism, RFK Jr.'s stupid speech. So everybody has a conscious, the execution, and a subconscious thinking about it. Between that is neurodivergency. Neurotypicals are thought, execute quick. That's typical human behavior. But evolution is a part of humanity, and neurodivergency is taking the time to think before execution. And that thought process that happens in your mind is very important. And what I see today more than anything is a sense of moral imbalance, or a sense of what some consider right and others consider wrong, where most religions have taught you you're it's not your place to judge. It has to be on this planet to a degree. Our own judgment upon others, because I think the main message I heard in my lifetime was that people weren't really giving a lot of thought about the things they were doing. They were just executing things based on their own pleasures, what they wanted for happiness. And those decisions that they make have impacts not only on them, but on others around them. And they don't take the time in their mind to process how that affects others, which shows a lack of empathy and humanity, of seeing there's a bigger picture of just yourself. You and your happiness alone are not enough. You have to take into considerations others, because we share this planet together. We have no choice. So, with that being said, there has to be some kind of baseline that we have to have that says this is how humans need to behave. And that was attempted, I think, at one point in humanity, to say these are the morals we should be living by. And a lot of people said, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we should do that. But then there's others that took those words and said, my happiness is more important than your idea of happiness. And that, to me, shows a complete lack of empathy. When you're so fixated on your own happiness that you don't take into consideration how it affects others. So, the whole point of all this is to say every human with a brain has a conscious and a subconscious, and the neurodivergence in between those two is your morals, how you live as a person, how you view people. And psychology is becoming a huge thing right now today. Everybody's been talking about psychology, mental health, and I've been a part of that whole culture for years now. And when you really do sit down and talk to another person and have them say, I need you to be honest with me. What's wrong with me? And they tell you what what's wrong with you. Then you really recognize yourself. You look in the mirror at yourself in a whole different way. When someone else that's a professional looks at you and says, this is the baseline of how humans should pretty much exist, and that qualified professional looks at you and says, this might be a problem, you may want to be more conscious about it, that's when you really start to change your mind. That's really when you start to build that more neurodivergency. That's when you start building that conscious up, that area that says, I can't execute right away because I need time to think. And that's the problem today is so many people with hyperactive minds feeding off of their happiness and their dopamine at any means for any addiction because it's readily available in any form today. I'm guilty of that as well. I have to be because my mind got so negative and deep that all of the choices I was making were destructive. And it wasn't until I started to recognize why was I doing these things and what was the cause of these things and how can I make things different that my life actually started getting better. But it's frustrating at the same time that when you have this level of consciousness and you see others that don't exhibit the same level of consciousness when they execute whatever it is that they do, you want to help them, but you can't convey in a very short amount of time in a 10-second TikTok clip the message for them to make them understand humanity and humans themselves. What's going on in their minds? What's going on in other people's minds? Like I said, we're humans sharing this world, so we have to have some kind of moral baseline that everyone needs to abide by. And right now, I see a lot of murder, a lot of killing, and they use the justification of religion. And it breaks my heart because I was raised Catholic. I was in the LDS church for a short time, and both of those really helped me shape who I am today because of the good morals of people around me and the upbringing of the word that I understood, but I don't listen directly to people. I don't hear every word they say. There is a message they say, and then there's a message they don't convey. And then I know how to process all of the differences. So I've learned how to speed up my mind to use that subconscious divide between conscious and subconscious, the neurodivergency, to say, this is how I think things should be and execute this way. Because I've taken the time to think in my mind what it is that you're talking about, and you're wrong. And autism isn't a disease or some kind of problem with the brain. I mean, having a worm or something reside in your brain probably does affect it and you quite a bit. So that's probably something that should get checked on psychologically by a professional. But for the most part, all of us just, neurodivergency is our moral conscious. It's our gap time between execution and thought. And that neurodivergence has built up a lot because there are people that I see that are special in this world that see the moral code for humans and just say, with their face and their words, you're wrong. Like, they know instinctively you're wrong. Like, what you're saying is wrong. What you're doing is wrong. I don't know how to make you understand, but you're wrong. And one of the things right now that I'm so lividly upset about is what goes on in the Middle East. The absolute genocide of people with the mask of religion. Let's use religion as a means to justify the killing of people. I've never understood the concept. And I think people that try to do that should be held to a very moral judgment here and punished accordingly. But the system that we built is built on humans being able to manipulate that, being able to justify the means, being able to say, well, maybe you don't think that's right, but this one person thinks it's right, so that's okay. And sometimes that's okay, but sometimes that's really not okay. Sometimes it's going to be a really bad problem for a lot of people if we let one person lead many without that moral buffer slowing down the process. And I see it right now, clear as day, people that just don't have that moral buffer, that delay of thought and execution, because they're grown so used to just doing what they feel is right based on how others have reacted to them. Like, I'm sure people have just blurted out things and you're like, wow, you're an asshole. It's, you got to put the spice on the sentence there, but Sometimes people just say things and you're like, you just don't even take the time to think. You don't understand enough to be able to talk or make decisions on certain things. You don't exhibit the same moral or ethical thought process that a human should have before doing something. And that needs to be checked. That needs to be looked at every single human by other humans. Like, you need to have another human check your reality. Because if you're just creating your own reality, your own entire life in your head, and never having someone know what you think, I live that way. And the reality that was in my head was not what was actually happening. So I had to rely on others to tell me what's really going on right now, because it feels like the world is ending. It feels like we're just about to start a giant war and kill a lot of people that is unnecessary and destroy a lot of things that just don't need destruction. We're doing a lot of needless destruction for no good reason. What you think is good reason. And being able to see myself in real time this way was what changed my life. To know that neurodivergency isn't a problem, it's a necessity to humans. You need to have that buffer, because if you're just emotionally reacting and executing, there's a very high chance you're doing the wrong thing. I'm so glad I recorded this. It was one of those times that I just feel like my mind is finally focused on something enough to be able to make it understood. I've lived my entire life trying to make people understand me, and there's only a few that really, really do. And when someone cares enough to understand how you feel and try to keep you in a good mood, those are the people you cherish and hold on to for a lifetime. And I try to keep those connections. And now I'm very conscious about the ones that just don't exhibit any empathy or concern for how I feel. And I just let them think what they want to think, do what they want to do, and live how they're going to live, as long as they don't bring their negativity to me. Because now I need to make sure I'm happy. Because for a very long time I wasn't.